Unsyndicated presents What the Puck with Sean Baligian.
And what the puck is going on with the Red Wings right now? He's Mike Iveso. I'm Sean Baligian. So glad you could join us Friday night here on the Unsyndicated Network. This is What the Puck. We have Red Berenson coming up later in the show. Can't wait to have a chat with Red. But, Mike, that's a perfect place to start. I was telling Matt Shepard this morning. It's not just the losses, okay? Here it comes. It's the way they're losing. There have been some despicable performances, including two against the Coyotes, that it just leave you shaking your head.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. It seems cliche to say it's how you play it, but it 100% is. But if we go to the very first What the Puck, we had a conversation about the Wings before I jumped on that bandwagon. I talked a lot about the metrics of things and the sustainability of it. And the good thing back then and the good thing during that 7-game winning streak was their compete level. And I think you can 100% say outside of Raymond and Fabry last night, where was that compete level and what the puck is going?
Yeah. This goes back. And by the way, Mike, I'm still not ready to say they aren't going to make the playoffs. I'm still not ready to say that. I'm sorry, because I look at the surroundings. The Islanders had their little hot run. They've lost a couple in a row. I don't know how the Capitals are doing it, but the Capitals are right there as well, so we have to give them credit. But with that being said, one of the things that we did talk about is the lack of sandpaper and the lack of having that playoff tenacity. And even as good as that streak was, and it was, make no mistake about that, that was a good streak. They knocked off good teams. You still were missing from that. And this team still, I hate to say this, staying far away, but I can understand why people go, okay, maybe they're just not there in toughness yet if this much adversity is going to send them into a tailspin. And unfortunately, Mike, we're left talking about things like that because this just seemingly came out of nowhere.
Yeah. When me, you, and Blake were texting, I think you were at state last night, so maybe it was just me and Blake texting last night in what is going on. Unfortunately, this is the time to point fingers. And you've got to point that finger in a way of, Steve, we had a trade deadline. I know we liked where we at. I know we stood pat. We didn't have to get anything. But the one thing that me and you had talked about that they were going to get was possibly some of that sand or some of that grit. And the one thing you can't have, love it, but you can't have it. You can't have Lucas Raymond, the one scrapping in practice. Lucas Raymond, the one slamming in front of the net. Lucas Raymond jumping on someone that I think was on Perron. You can't have that. That's not the player to do that. That's not his game. So that tells you it's missing. On top of, there's other guys in that locker room that can be doing that, and they're just not. And that is the big question of why. That's where stuff starts flying around. But is there a divide in the locker room? Is Lalonde losing the team? What's going on? Because this is concerning, because now this is going to be the second time in 7 games the coach has called you out in the press.
Yep. That's a huge factor. I mean, you know that. Listen, Mike, okay, we're going to sound like old people, okay? I'm going to sound like old people. I'm not going to throw you under the bus, okay? That kind of stuff happened quite a bit 30 years ago, 35 years ago. It doesn't happen today. Things have changed. People call you out for doing things like that now, So you know that it has to be something severe if you feel the need to do that. And I tend to agree with something that you said last night in our text messages. There's something off. There's something off. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something off. And I think, unfortunately, in situations like this, when it starts to rain, it starts to pour. And I think it's pouring right now.
I know you said you were out at state last night. Did you get to watch a little bit of the game?
I did actually today. Yep.
So the big question that I have that leads me to say something even bigger is going on within that locker room is Shane Goss's.
Yep.
And I don't know what he was doing last night. It's one of those games I will never accuse someone of, throwing a game, or I'm not going to, but it looked purposeful and pointed in some kind of way. And we know he was on the trade block, and this is where feelings get hurt, things happen. But watching him last night, he's not a defensive player, he's an offensive player. His offense, it was way off last night, and it was just screaming that something was going on. And then you get into the press conference and you have Ben Sherratt sitting there, and he says, basically, this is the defense that we did not play when we were winning games. There's something going on there, and those are things that I know I'll never hear. You always get whispers of it, and then we'll hear whispers of it, in the postseason, the preseason, and stuff. But I think we were onto something. There's something in that locker room that's
Yeah. And the crazy thing about it, with all due respect, let's face it, defense wasn't exactly helping them win, and,
Right.
and Mike, I think there are a couple things in play that I want to run by you. Okay. They're things that we talked about. I know people don't want to hear them, but I think they need to be brought up. But first, I have to tell you what's going on with the Rockers this weekend. It's a huge weekend for the Rockers. Okay. This weekend promises an exhilarating lineup as the Motor City Rockers take on the Port Huron Prowlers in a 3-game series. Now, they're going on right now out in Port Huron. The Rockers currently have a 7-5 lead in the Battle of the I-94 series and a golden opportunity to solidify their dominance on the ice. Saturday, they're back at Big Boy Arena, marks a special occasion as well as its youth sports night. The Rockers extend a warm invitation to all youth sport groups and organizations to join in the festivities and celebrate their invaluable contribution to the youth sports industry. The event takes place Saturday, March 16th at 6:05. And then how about this for a St. Patrick's Day bash? The Rockers will be sporting vibrant green specialty jerseys, adding an extra dash of flair to the St. Patrick's Day festivities. Take advantage of the special offer of 2 tickets and a bucket of beer for just $40, making it the perfect way to enjoy the game with friends and family. Don't miss out on this spirited match happening at 2:05 against the Port Huron Prowlers. So Saturday night at Big Boy Arena and Sunday matinee game against the Port Huron Prowlers. He's Mike Avison. I'm Sean Belegian. Red Berenson's going to join us in a little bit on the show here tonight. Glad you could join us as well. Mike, I want to go back to something that you and I talked about a few weeks ago. 2 things, actually. And let's start with the latter. We both knew that Alex Lyon couldn't continue this. He was really, I mean, arguably their MVP. I'm not joking when I say that. And I think you agreed with that. And we reminded people he did that in Florida, but the staying power wasn't there. So I think you got a dash of that. And I'm going to say this again, and I know people don't like to hear it around here, but it's not my job to try to make you happy. It's my job to, kind of tell the truth. I think that this area for many years has taken its players and gone like this. And I think you know what I mean by that. Put them on a pedestal that they don't necessarily deserve to be on. Mike, dare I say this is a situation of water finding its level with this team right now?
I mean, and I know Blake's behind the scenes, and he'll know the term regression to the mean. I mean, it's like all streaks come to an end. You're not as good as your hottest streak. You're not as bad as your worst streak. It all comes out in the end of who you are, and that was back to that very first show we talked about. I said, you can't have this team with the players that they have, and this was pre-Kane. They were second in shot percentage, and that's going to catch up to you. So the funny thing is they were second in shot percentage and 23rd in goals. Now that shot percentage is way off, and now they're almost dead last in goals. There's your regression to the mean. There's your water finding its level. it comes down to your leading scorer has 54 points. There's guys with 55 goals in this league.
Yep.
I mean, and that's again, there's no rip to it. That's not me being insultive to it. That's us being realistic. Like you said, we're not here to make you happy, but we have, and we've had for a long time, very nice second and third line team. We have some potential out there. We have some guys now that we've got Keane and DeBrincat and stuff, but there's got to be more things to put to it. But for right now, I think when you look at it, the 6 and 7 over the 13 games that we are is who we are.
Our buddy Hubie chimed in. It's still one of my favorites. You know it. Mikhail Bossy Samuelson.
Yes.
I still one of the greatest. That's a true story. Somebody said that Mikhail Samuelson reminded them of Mike Bossy.
And hey, don't forget
Okay.
Dylan Larkin's the fastest skater in the league. They makes him great. I don't know. And again, I like him. And you know what I have said about that contract. And I've gone off about that contract. I can't say that.
Yeah.
Because when you leave the lineup and your team loses 7 games, you mean a lot to that liner. That does not make him a first liner. That does not, but that makes him very important to this team, and he is. And I'll go back to, I remember when we were on Woodward Sports and he got the C, and I was ready to throw a fit, and McCarty came in and threw a party, and he loved it. D-Mac, you were right. I mean, he turned around from who he was, Sean, and you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, 1,000%. I listen, Mike, I'll go further than that. I think it probably would have happened earlier. But there was some growing up, and I think one day Dylan Larkin will probably be the first guy to say that yeah, it probably should have been a year, maybe 2 years earlier, but there was some growing up that need to be happening. No question about that. You know, it's funny that you mentioned, Mike, the Red Wings and their scoring, because I had a conversation with somebody that I know that's a hockey fan. I'm not going to say their name. And he made a point to say to me that, you know, while Patty's doing a really good job with the Islanders, and while I think that's true, he said that is such a nondescript lineup. And I kind of looked at him and said, is it? You know, especially like if you take a look at what's going on with the Islanders right now and their leading scorers. And Mike, when you brought that up about where the Red Wings leading scorers are, I challenge anybody to go look at what the Islanders are doing right now. And, you know, this is a situation where you've got Barzal and Dobson and Bo and, you know, a bunch of guys that are really put together nice seasons. You know, when you're, you know, I could look it up. Say, Todd, this is where I lean on Todd. Todd, fact check me. Where your 4th or 5th leading scorer has as many points as the other team's leading scorer, you know, that's an issue. And I think that's where they're at right now, you know, where, you know, a guy like Brock Nelson, oh, okay, he's, you know, your 4th, 5th leading scorer, whatever the case may be, and he's got more points than anybody else on the Red Wings right now. I think that's a pretty good team that maybe people are trying to dismiss a little bit, and thus that's why Lou made the move, saying this is a better lineup than the results have shown. We have to try something drastic.
100%. And we talk a lot about you are who's in front of you. You are your coach. So we look at that move to Patty Waugh, and what did we start the show out with was sandpaper. Yep. If there's one thing we know is Patty Waugh is sandpaper, and your team is going to be sandpaper. I mean, you're going old school. He's had bag skates. You know, he's got a lot better with the media. He's a little less sandpaper at the minute, but with that team's going to come out and play. And, you know, they've lost their last 2. They're going to find their water is going to find their level too. But when it comes down to it, and we'll find out, I believe we play Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost positive we're going to find out a lot about this Red Wing team right here. Because again, they're not an 0-7 team. They're also not a 6-0 team. They're somewhere meshed in the middle of that. They're going to have to come up with an effort when they play the Islanders, because Islanders are going to bring it. And Patty Waugh is going to have that team ready to play.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going down there. I'm going down there with our old friend Teddy. Shout out to Teddy. I know he watches all these. Teddy and I are going down Tuesday. And, you know, I haven't had a chance to get down much. So going to do that. Mike, very quickly, let's talk about our friends at Legacy. Really appreciate everything they do. I always mention it, big hockey fans. And did you know that thousands of Metro Detroiters have already called Legacy Partners to get help with their home and auto insurance? Our friends at Legacy Partners are one of Southeast Michigan's top independent insurance agents. If you don't believe me, call them for a free quote. Just give them the chance. They'll prove it to you. They provide a full-service, one-stop solution for all of your insurance needs, personal and business, large and small. Legacy has helped many of our listeners by fixing mistakes other agents have made, asking the right questions to get the right coverage put in place to properly protect you. Oh, and save some money at the same time. Chances are, if you haven't checked your policies in the last year, you are paying too much and you could be underinsured. Enter Legacy Partners. Like I said, give them a shot and a chance to help you with your home, your cars, life insurance, Medicare enrollment, or other business insurance needs. Call them today at 586-209-4106 or visit legacypartnersins.com. And Mike, in the Mutual Friends Club, shout out to our buddies at Wiggly's for hooking us up with a big corned beef. The boys from Legacy and the boys from Wiggly's are all good friends, and we're in that friend group as well. We got a big old corned beef that you and I are going to smoke.
It was huge. I know something important's coming my way when I get tweet and a text from you come up at the same time. And I was at work and I knew I had to get to that one. And when I saw the picture of that monstrosity, all I could think of was the old Rubens. And we were talking the other day for hours about day after sandwiches of that corned beef. You guys haven't had one. Not only is it delicious, but Sean, that's easy.
Oh, piece of cake. It really is. And I'm telling you, and it's funny because I was even talking to the boys down there about this today. I got a chance to see Dylan down at Wiggly's. I'm telling Mike, I say it to everybody, the day after. The corned beef is great, but the day after, I don't know what it is, that juice just sinks in and everything's cool. All right, we're going to wrap up the Red Wing conversation. Wouldn't you notice it? That's when Tammy jumps in. Sorry about that, Tammy. You're going to have to watch it later and catch up. I'm going to ask you, and anybody that wants to chime in, you're going to feel free. This is going to be my weekly question, I think, to the end of the season, Mike. And by the way, we're having a big barbecue, no pun intended, smoker. Yes, you can come over and eat my meat. You can come over and eat my meat. All right? And Tammy, this is for you and Hubie and anybody else. Today is what, March 15th? Are the Red Wings a playoff team? Y or N?
Oh, man, no.
I feel the exact same way.
There's one thing I've learned from betting is you can't go off your recency bias. You can't look at what you just seen and make that decision. What scares me is unknown of what we're talking about, that there's something going on. It's just not puck luck. It's not just, bad plays here or there. Can't get a break. There's something going on. The problem with that I have with everybody else is the Islanders are the only team that scare me. Washington with a minus 31 goal differential is going to go away. People
I don't get it.
How far back they fall. And Buffalo is on their end of where they're going to end up down. So can we beat, the question you're asking me is, can we beat out the Islanders?
Totally agree.
And I think that what we've seen in the recency is no Larkin, no leadership, something going on in that locker room. I'm still sticking with yes. I can't say I'm 75, 80, 90%. I am still sticking with yes. What scares me also is he's out 3 more games. Does that 3 more turn into 3 more, Because as we learned from Scotty Bowman, we really never know what's going on with injuries. So if we get him back,
I'm going to say yes as well, but I'm even going to put a number on it. This is how not confident I feel, Mike. 51-49. Like, honestly, I don't feel confident right now. And part of the reason I don't feel confident is what Tammy just said. And Tammy, this is something Mike and I talked about in the first segment. It sure looks like something's going on. And I think they rode Lyon too hard, and Lyon got all the roses that he deserved, but he's not that guy. And I think there comes a point in time when you ride a guy that hard that things start to regress a little bit. And I mean, look, I still say, Mike, we said it a month ago. I don't know where the Red Wings would be right now without Alex Lyon. And I mean that. That is not, swarmy, sarcastic Sean. He's been that good. But obviously, I think you see the importance that he's had to this team, at least playing at that level, and the importance that Dylan Larkin has to this team.
It's just caught up to Lyon. So if I can go back to our GM and his comments at the trade deadline of we like our depth, we like where we're at, we like our guys, we've got to get them playing. If this ship is going to sink, I would like to see Sebastian Cossa on that ship and see what we have here. We have to start seeing what we have because Augustine's a long ways away if that's who they're leaning on. That kid is still at state. He's got at least a year or two still there.
At least
let him marinate until junior, senior year. What is he? Let's see. If you're telling me we have this and we're confident in what we have, it's not working right now. And I'm sorry, Reimer, Lyon, we got to give this kid a chance and let's see where he can come in. Is this where his Vasilevsky moment is in taking over for the Ben Bishops of the Red Wings? That's my opinion. I would like to see that. I'd like to see a lot of these young guys. I've got to see it. I can't go through another run of, I think we have a lot down there and we never see it.
I see, and I'm with you. I brought this up the other day, Mike. You weren't on with me. I brought this up the other day. You knew he was at my feet for like the last 5 minutes, right? All the people expecting that it's going to be okay. Look how well Trey played, and he's just going to jump into the league. I don't know what to tell you. It doesn't work that way. There's a reason why, Patrick Waugh and Cam Ward come to mind as 20-year-olds that kind of came in and saved the day and ended up, winning the Conn Smythe. That doesn't mean that a guy can't do it a little bit later, whether it be Dryden, whether it be Matt Murray, whatever the case may be. But that answer isn't something that's going to happen in the next couple of years. I mean, that's something that you're looking at, I think, a little bit longer than that. And I want to make it clear. I'm not going to throw Sebastian out. I hope I'm making that abundantly clear, but I think there are some people, and I brought this up to Matt Shepard earlier today. I think there are some people that feel that maybe, just maybe, Trey has kind of surpassed Sebastian. But what we think is inconsequential. If Sebastian goes out and gets the job done and settles down into the prospect that he was drafted to be, we can talk all we want. If he's the guy, he's the guy. So I don't think that's settled yet. I just know there are some people that are thinking that way. I'll leave it at that.
Right. Maybe Kossa's our Ben Bishop to Augustine or Vasilevsky.
You got it.
But we have to have them in here, and these things happen. If there's two things we know is goalies and defensemen take a long time to marinate, grow in the NHL. You don't see a lot of 18, 20, you get into your 21, 22, 23-year-olds are going to do it. So we've got, I would like to see what Cossa can do because they liked him when they got him. He said he was that prospect. You have that potential. That just means you haven't done anything yet. So I would like to see what he can do.
Yeah. Let me tell you about our friends at Wealth Advantage and remind you that Red Berenson's coming up in just a few minutes here on What the Puck. Are you ready to take charge of your financial future? Look no further than the Wealth Advantage Group, located in historic downtown Northville and owned by those two guys, the handsome guys, Mike and Jeff Husak, two brothers with over 20 years of industry experience. They understand that your financial goals are as unique as you are. That's why they offer personalized expert guidance to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning. Now, whether you're saving for retirement, getting ready to sell your company, already in retirement, whatever the case may be, they can help guide you through every step of your financial journey. They work with clients throughout all stages of life and have clients in over 20 states. The investment world is a complex one, so if you're ready to start taking your finances more seriously, it might be time to work with a couple of experts. Reach out to those guys right there. The Wealth Advantage Group at 248-773-8574 or visit their website at www.thewealthadv.com. Mike Ivesil, Sean Belegian with you. Mike, it's interesting, of course, we're going to be talking to Red Berenson in a few minutes about the alumni game coming up April 27th, Wings and Rangers. The 90s kind of get disrespected, I think. And here's what I mean by that. We grew up in the 90s, and I know a lot of people talk and wax poetically about the 80s. It was a great time. I think the early 90s, before, the dead puck era really set in, I thought it was a heck of a lot of fun. It wasn't necessarily fun for the two teams that are going to be playing in this alumni game. It's so funny. You and I were talking about this during the week. Think of all the heartache that the Red Wings fans had. And I mean, I still remember people saying after the loss against the Leafs in 93, Jamie Baker in 94, and the sweep, and it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. Isn't it amazing how things can change? And it's kind of funny because in that same era, the Rangers had some pretty damn good teams. I remember that team in 92 was really good. Remember Graves taking that slash on Mario, and, Penguins coming back, and they thought that the Rangers missed their window too. And then 1994, they break the 54-year curse. And of course, 1997, they break the 42-year curse. So unbelievable for both of those franchises. And you and I were talking about it. Special time there in the early 90s for sure.
Well, yeah. And talking about having conversations of it's never going to happen. You first start with 95, right? And not only are we going to beat the Devils, but we're going to work on our Stanley Cup celebration during practice and have that caught in the media. But then in the 96, so you always send me over what we're doing, and I've got to refresh my brain. My brain doesn't work like your brain. I remember the 95-96 season, but I didn't remember it as well as I did. In going through how historic that year was, and to not win it that year, losing to the Avalanche, I believe there in the playoffs. But a little fact, I had no idea. I'm sure you knew, and I don't know how many of those people out there knew that team, the Red Wings, were one of very few teams in history that scored a goal in every regular season game. They weren't shut out the entire year. I believe twice in the playoffs they got shut up. I didn't know that in that 62 win season they never had them. They had some great seasons. Then you go over to the other side, the Rangers was the same thing. Now, if you can go back, then I know what my thought is when we were back in the 90s, Sean. Did you think one or the other was actually going to break through and get one at some point, and the other one wasn't?
Yes.
Which one did you think was?
I thought the Rangers would. I really did. I've confessed my sins. I've confessed my sins to the number one guy out there, Darren McCarty. And I thought that he would pummel me, but he gave me the look and said, "No, bro, I can't blame you." I thought the Red Wings were soft. I did. I thought they were soft. I thought I saw them so many times, Mike, whether it be, now here's my brain, that series in 92 where they got demolished by a Blackhawks team that they were better than, that series in 93 that I mentioned, Nikolai Borishevsky, the Jamie Baker thing, the Devils. I was over your house for that. Right? We were over your house for that Borishevsky thing. But and even 96, when push came to shove, and everybody talks about Lemieux's hit on Draper. It was a dirty hit. Don't anybody that tries to argue that, stop it. He didn't have to do that, blah, blah, blah. I thought that they were soft, and when push came to shove, they were going to falter. And it's amazing how you can change, perception of something, isn't it?
You 100%. Because I'd be on the opposite end of it. I obviously, late in the 80s, I changed my alliance. I was a huge Devils fan. Sean Burke and John McClain and Kirk Muller and those guys turned me. And so I couldn't like the Rangers. I hated the Rangers, Mateau. I was on the other end of it. I thought the Wings would. I mean, the Rangers were good in there, but I saw, and I know, especially with the Don Cherries of the world that we grew up, the Wings were going foreign at the time, and they were going soft, but they were just so darn good. And that's when those 90s the Red Wings teams were young. The Rangers went old. The Rangers went experienced. And I know you'll remember, I always say this, I know you'll remember that the 94 trade deadline, when Keenan went Keenan with the first place team. And started dumping guys. One guy that ended up being an absolute star in the league of Tony Amonte for frickin' Mateau.
Yeah.
That trade ruined me for years. I mean, what are we redoing here? So I always thought they were on the older end of it. They were going down, the wings were going up. But again, like you said, perception can change very quickly.
Yeah. It's amazing. You know, I think back, I remember, you know, that great Rangers team. We should have seen it coming. They really struggled against your Devils in that game 7 in 92 because you and I, we were like, all right, leave him alone. He's watching Rangers and Devils on a Friday night game 7. Leave me alone. I'm watching the Habs struggle against a shit Hartford Whaler team that they had no business going into double overtime, that at the stroke of midnight, Russ Courtnall saved my heart because I literally, I thought I was, if they lost to the Whalers, I'm like, are you kidding me? This is going to be the worst thing ever. And if you remember, the Rangers kind of fell flat on their face the next year until Iron Mike came in. And, you know, Tammy mentioned it. I think, you know, with Richter and Leach there in particular, I thought they're going to break through. I openly admit, and you even brought up the Don Cherry thing, and that's probably part of my reasoning. I thought because the influx of a bunch of guys, I thought they were soft and could be pushed around. I did. I openly admit it. I've confessed my sin. Mac, if you're watching, you know I confessed it to you, and I'll confess it to you again. I really did. I thought, nah, it's just, you know what? They're going to be a cute little team that is always good. And look, they were the measuring stick. Let's be honest. They were the measuring stick in the National Hockey League for well over a decade.
And it's funny we say that because there's two guys that may have changed a little bit of that perception. One outwardly on the ice, and the other one, I think we recently, within the last 10 or so years, caught a glimpse of in documentaries, was Papa Bear Fatisa, and how tough he actually was and in that locker room, and beating on Fedorov. And then on the ice, need I say more than Vladdy? That Flyers series, Vladdy, was just the epitome of what he was doing to what the Legion of Doom or whatever that line was with Leclerc and
Go on.
Lindros.
You got it. Who else?
Leclerc, Lindros, and give me an initial.
MR.
I'm not going to get it.
Michael Renberg.
Michael Renberg.
Yeah.
They're big fellas, and Vladdy dominated.
Do you know what it reminded me of? Scott Stevens 2 years earlier.
Okay.
I mean, I know you remember Scott Stevens took their soul. I mean, he did.
I was at the game.
Yeah, he did. He took their soul. Like, come on. It was like that series was over in that moment, whether people wanted to admit it or not, you know? Who's next? What a beautiful asshole. And I mean that with all due respect. Like, honestly, what a beautiful, like, who's next? Okay, Scott, I'm done. I have a lower body injury. This
right there summed up exactly what we were talking about. I mean, you got Sean Burr handing sticks back. Absolutely.
He told me point blank, like, rest his soul. One of the funniest human beings ever. Like, rest his soul. He told me point blank. He goes, that was it for me. He goes, I was never getting out of Scotty's doghouse. Like, that was, and he goes, it was a reaction. You could see as a reaction. He goes, but yeah, it does look like I'm handing a stick to him. And he goes, that really wasn't it. But poor Percy. Oh.
So let me ask you a question, sir. So we've had these conversations. The Red Wings, the 90s. Give me one player, either drafted or an addition, that you think changed the course of that franchise into the 97-98 Cups.
Nick Lidstrom.
Okay.
Seriously. I know everybody's going to go with Sergey. I'm not going to argue with you, or Steve. I'm not going to argue with you. Nick, he was unbelievable. You know it. He was unbelievable. I don't know. I don't think the average fan, Mike, knows it, and I'm not trying to be snobby guy. I don't think the average fan knows just how unbelievable Nick Lidstrom was. I mean, it's just absolutely, positively, like, just, I think I told you this. I went around and asked, I forget the number. This is when I was with the Whalers. I think it was like 22. I don't remember the exact number. And I asked scouts what makes Nick Lidstrom Nick Lidstrom. And every one of them said something along the lines of intellect, brain, playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. Just the way that guy saw the game, it just made it so easy. And even when we talked to Aaron Ward, do you remember Aaron Ward? Here's a guy that played with him, practiced with him every day. And when he played against him, he was like in awe, like open awe of the things that Nick Lidstrom did. And that's for me. Who would you go with?
There's a name, and we had a conversation when we were in Traverse City, and this name kept getting brought up. You brought it up in a story in the truck on the way up to Traverse City. And then as soon as we got to the rink, someone brought up this name. You know what I'm going to say?
No. Who?
Larry Murphy.
Oh, that's my guy.
Yeah. I mean, but still, I mean, your story of not, when did he know on that 3 yes, but getting him was just such another great, solid addition.
Booed out of Toronto. I mean, like literally booed out of Toronto. And the guy came here and, well, quite frankly, was his Hall of Fame self. That's an underrated move. Under Bob Rouse. I mean, the way that Rouse came in and provided the role that he provided, you know, I mean, boy, that was a fun time. Listen, we have one more person to tell you about, and then we're going to have our conversation with Red Berenson. Let me tell you about my friend, Lindsay Broadwell. When it comes time to sell your house, whether you're buying, you're selling, sometimes both, you need to contact the right agent. The agent that I recommend, right there, Lindsay Broadwell. Your house is probably the biggest investment you'll ever make, and that's why you need a pro. Lindsay grew up on the mean streets of Northville and has expanded her team all over Southeast Michigan. She's an expert in all facets of the business. Now, when it's time to move, our friend Lindsay and her team will make sure you get the most out of your house and that everything goes smoothly when finding your new home. Buyer, seller, first-time buyers, doesn't matter. Make sure you contact Lindsay at BroadwellHomes.com. She will help you with everything from start to close. Licensed realtor at Real Broker LLC. Start your search today at BroadwellHomes.com. Mike, you know what? We're going to have to go to our buddy Red Berenson in just a second. And I have a feeling that a certain local hockey coach will be brought up in that conversation.
I knew it.
I'm going to go out on a limb and just say that's going to happen. You know what you and I need to do one day? And you know what? Maybe we grab some of our friends of yesteryear. Yeah. We need to have like one night where we just talk about all our old VHS fight tapes. And I wish one time, like, we could actually have like a viewing party. How great would that be? Just like the camera on us watching those old VHS fight tapes, because man, everybody had one. Everybody. Yes. I think I told you this during one of the Stoney and Wojo radiothons. I was doing the overnight shift, and it was like me and Shelly, and all we did was peruse YouTube and talk about all the insane moments that he's been a part of. Because if you think about some of the insane moments in the last 40 years, Chris Chelios was involved in a lot of those insane moments in the National Hockey League. So
he seems to be in a lot of those.
Yes.
And I know I had one of those tapes, and I guarantee Joe Ament probably still has. And I went down a big rabbit hole because we were trying to get to that today. And I went down a big rabbit hole a lot. I mean, just reading stories making me cry. And there was one rabbit hole that I went down. I've thrown this at you before, but I got real angry. This has nothing to do with fights, but man, you've got to get Ozzy on. I'm even more madder than I've ever been about this guy not being in the Hall of Fame. I'm going through the 90s wings and looking at the important people, and then getting all the way out to 08 in the Cup in 08 and things. So, I mean, hopefully we can get a chance to talk to him. But if I can answer a couple things here in this chat room here, because Aaron is throwing some hate at me for the Avalanche hat, I believe. All I got to say is Nathan McKinnon to that one. And Tammy asking about me and Nellie, when the dog is home next week, and me and Nellie are going to watch some Nathan McKinnon and some Avalanche games and be happy. But Tammy was asking about the stick. It's a Brett Hull game-used stick. And Sean, over here, a Patrick Eliash.
Mm-hmm. Mhm.
And then in the corner back there is Steve Yzerman, game used stick.
Ooh.
The rare.
All right, so
rare
who you have Hall,
Yeah.
Eliash, and Iserman?
Yzerman, game used stick.
All right, so I'm gonna let you guys in the chat. Okay, so Hall, Eliash, Iserman. Okay, the three that I have here are Sakic, Chelios, and a U.S. Olympic stick from Jack Johnson. Those are formidable matchups, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Those are formidable matchups.
I like it. Like it.
Oh my gosh, Hubie, I've seen that fight. Hubie said there's a hockey fight out there. We're about 2:30 into our bench clearing brawl with Ohio University when I was at U of M beer bar. I've seen, you know what? I've seen that. You know, Jim, I think your brother sent it to me. Have you seen that one, Mike?
I have not.
Look for it. It's
Jesse has. He's got to send it to me. I'm hoping I see some Hubie in there.
Yes. Don Cherry's Rock'em Sock'em videos. Man, I used to watch all that stuff. And then those videos went around, and oh my gosh, it was just so many characters. John Cordick, for goodness sake, you know?
They're all there. Like the names. I mean, from the world's most dangerous man, Link Gates, the one that me and Joe had incident in Quebec where the fan jumped on the ice and went up to the Buffalo bench and Ray just haymaker jackhammered the guy for about 5 minutes. It's the most unbelievable. And then did you see?
I can't even imitate it that fast, Mike. I can't.
But you've got to watch the interview after where Rob Ray just, like, we didn't know what I was going to do. You know, he was chirping us and he came up and, well, we had to do it. And Jackhammer was out. Fight tapes are incredible. Again, I went down a pretty good rabbit hole watching some fights today.
You know, seriously, let's plan that in the not too distant future. Maybe even when the season's over, just one night, just sit back and talk about some of the great fights and some of those fight tapes. And we could have like 30 people up in this screen and, okay, give us your top 3 fights. You know, I was there when Joey knocked out poor Jim Kite. And I thought he died. Like I really did. I seriously, Mike, I thought he died. I mean, it was like I could hear taps playing. It was terrifying, you know? And look what Tammy said. I have a pair of Verbeek gloves from the Devils signed by Pat. That's pretty cool.
Oh, I've got this random set of David Legwan Team USA gloves from when he skated with us during the lockout when we were at Grosse Pointe North.
I'm familiar with Dave.
Good local guy.
Dave on sometime. Dave's another, and Ozzy. I've been talking to Ozzy. I think when the season ends, there's a really good chance we're gonna try to catch up with Ozzy. So good times. Hey, listen, Mike, we have a conversation with Red Berenson. Before we go, one quick thing. Team Michigan this weekend out in Chelsea, a big event. All the best heading to a tournament. Team Michigan won last year. Did I mention that? But looking forward to that, and certainly good luck to your boy who's going to be out there in Chelsea amongst the honored few.
Yep, and it's something that we obviously we're close to. We love it. We're excited about it, not just as a dad, but me and you as fans. But if you guys have a chance to get out to the Chelsea Coliseum there, starting at 11 o'clock tomorrow, they'll have 40 juniors and 40 seniors. They split them into 4 teams, 2 teams of 20. The juniors and seniors will play quick games in the morning, and then the seniors play the seniors at 5 o'clock tomorrow night in Chelsea. And then they'll have one more game at 10:30 Sunday morning. But it is what these coaches are telling you are the 40 best juniors and the 40 best seniors in this state. And Sean, me and you saw them before they went to Minnesota last year. And how intense was that game? That wasn't a bunch of buddies playing hockey. That was game 7.
It was awesome.
There was almost some fights in there. We know some of those games. We know Ricky Gadd was going to win a heavy, mean team, and they're going to have to play like that. So if you think you're going to go out there and see a nice scrimmage amongst friends, you're going to be wrong. These guys want to make this team. If you can make this team to go to Minnesota, Sean, you're as a senior, you're pushing your stuff.
No doubt. No doubt. So if you get a chance, hey, very quickly, Mike, always a pleasure. We're going to chat with Red Berenson next. I want to remind people, our friends at the Detroit Sports Commission are urging you, go to visitdetroit.com, 2024 NFL Draft for all the info you need on what's going on in Detroit. And make sure you download the NFL One Pass as well for access to the free draft viewing in the area in and around Campus Martius Park. All right, a conversation with Red Berenson next on What the Puck. And welcome back into What the Puck. It is indeed a pleasure to talk to this guy. I don't want to make him blush, but there aren't a lot of guys that are known by just one name, but he is certainly one of them. He is Red. He is beloved all throughout the hockey community. In particular, of course, in our backyard, he's a University of Michigan icon, and he kindly joins us right now. Red Berenson. Coach, always a pleasure to talk to you. How are you, sir?
Sean, I'm really good. Although I'd be better if the Red Wings would have won last night.
Yeah.
We went to the game and it just, I was really hoping they'd get going in the right direction, but it didn't happen. But I'm fine. I'm glad to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, Red, let's start here. Of course, we have another alumni game coming up. You're very active with the alumni group, to be sure. 84 years young, I want to point that out. And boy, you should see him. He can still go. But it's special when you have these games, Red. You were part of the alumni game against the Bruins back in September, and this one coming up April 27th against the Rangers. A special place for you. You played for the Wings, you played for the Rangers, but talk about how fun it is to get together with the boys and still go out there and take to the ice.
Well, that's half the fun, really, is even though I didn't play with a lot of these guys, I didn't play with Darren McCarty and most of the young guys, and even Larry Murphy, and Murph might be one of the older guys, but we didn't cross over our careers because I'm a little older than they are, but it's still the same banter in the locker room and even on the ice and on the bench. It's good fun. And I did play with Phil Meir, who's one of the Red Wing coaches, and Nick Libet. And so we go back a long way. And I played with Mickey Redmond, of course, in Detroit. So there's a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new friends that we've made as well.
Something special when you get all the pros together, Red, and you can speak to this. You guys play a lot of these games, but when you're wearing that Red Wing jersey, and I'll use the Bruins as an example, it seems like the game ticked up a bit in that third period, and those old competitive juices started flying, and a very entertaining third period, to say the least, between the two squads.
Yeah, no question. And as much as it starts off to be a fun event, and we're trying, but then in the third period, when the game's on the line, you can see, and some of these young guys can really go, and they get going, and it stretches everybody's abilities to keep up. But I enjoy it. I know the young guys enjoy it, and I know the fans enjoy it, and it's always for a good cause. I mean, these games, we don't play them for money. We play them to raise money for the cause, and whatever that cause is. And we played for some great causes around Detroit. And that's why the alumni have been so successful, as they know they're doing good for the community, whether it's retired veterans, whether it's families in need, or whether it's helping build a rink or improve a rink or a school or whatever it is. I mean, the boys are always right there to say, yeah, I'll play.
Red Berenson kindly joining us. And to that point, GH Pastor Foundation for Kids. It's April 27th, Big Boy Arena, 2:00 in the afternoon. Nearly $30,000 donated and raised last game for the CMN Epilepsy Foundation of Kentuckiana, the Judson Center. It is a great event, no doubt about that. And hopefully the start of an Alumni Cup series as well. Red, I'm glad that you touched on that, because I don't think perhaps people in the community understand how many of these games are played. And this is, of course, it's for the love of the game, but it's something bigger than that. You guys are always giving something back. How often are you playing in these games with the Detroit Red Wing alumni?
I'd say I'm playing in just about one a week now, but early in the year, it was maybe one every 3 weeks. But now that we're in the full so-called winter here in Michigan, we're playing more often. We have a game tomorrow, actually, at St. Mary's. Kalaniki will probably be playing over there. But it's all over the map. I mean, we played 2 outdoor games at Clark Field, if you know where that is, at Clark Arena, just under the bridge. And with good causes over there, good, perfect weather, an outdoor rink, and some hardy fans that showed up with their sunglasses because it was so. We had some of the players wearing sunglasses, but it's fun. We play a lot of games. George Bowman organizes our schedule and make sure the cause is a good cause and so on, so that all we have to do is show up and play the game and have fun.
Red Berenson kindly joining us, and I wanted to give a shout out our mutual friend, Brandon Kalaniki, one of your boys at Michigan, just won a state championship. Congratulations to Coach Cal. I know that makes you happy to see your boys move on. Coach, so many guys have moved on, whether it be playing, coaching, just making success of themselves in life as their coach, as a mentor. That has to make you feel awesome.
That's huge. When I got into coaching, didn't fully realize it. But one of the reasons I did get into coaching was my coach, Al Renfrew, here at Michigan. He made such an impact on me and helped guide me through my career as well as going to school. And up until then, I was just a hockey player. And then I became a student. And then I got a master's degree. And all due to Al's influence and reminding me, there's life after hockey. And you want to be ready to look after yourself and look after your family when you can no longer play at a high level and so on. But to see these guys like Kalaniki, and there's so many of them now that are doing really well with their careers, whether it's still playing, in a lot of cases, still playing in the NHL. And even with Detroit, I think we've got 3 former Michigan players playing for Detroit, and they're spread out around the league and the NHL, but a lot of them that aren't playing hockey, and they're doctors and lawyers and teachers and you name it. And like Kalaniki is a high school coach, and he's doing at the high school level what we were doing at the college level. He's helping these kids take the next step with their careers, and hopefully will be good citizens in their communities and good leaders in their communities as well.
Red, we've talked many times over the years. I don't think I've ever asked this question of you. Regina boy, Saskatchewan boy through and through. You played for the Pats. You played for the McFarlands, Flin Flon. How did you end up at Michigan? How did Ann Arbor become the landing spot for your collegiate career and what really began a 65-year love affair with the University of Michigan?
Yeah, amazing. I never heard of Michigan before. I'd heard of the state of Michigan because I knew Gordie Hall played in Detroit. But there were 5 of us on our junior team at the Pats, and we had decided that we're going to go to college after junior, even though Montreal had talked to us about turning pro. And Montreal owned us. There was no draft then. It was called a sponsorship. And they owned us if we played in that city. And that was my hometown where I was born and raised, in Regina. So anyway, we got to the point where we were going to go to college. And one of the reasons was our coach in Regina was a guy who had played in the NHL a little bit, Frank Mario. And he influenced it. He told us, boys, if you're going to make it to the NHL, you'll make it. But in the meantime, get an education, get something to fall back on. You don't want to be a hockey bum like me. He called himself a hockey bum. We looked up to him as a real good coach and a good person. But nevertheless, he influenced us to go to school. So we went to the library. There were no internet. There were no cell phones, no computers. We went to the library and we looked up the best academic schools that had hockey scholarships. And Michigan was right near the top. And so I wrote the coach a letter, and we were too cheap to call long distance. I wrote him a letter, and geez, he called me right away. He got back to me, and he said, I would really like you to come down here and visit the school. I'd never been on a plane before. And so sure enough, I get on this plane and come down to Michigan, and I was blown away by everything. But we loved the fact it was near Detroit. And I don't think he even showed me the old Coliseum, the rink in Ann Arbor. It wasn't very impressive, but he showed me the football stadium at Michigan. And I was really impressed. So I went back and told the boys, we're going to Michigan. And so that's how it started. And the two of us, we hitchhiked to Michigan from 1,500 miles.
Wow.
And we hitchhiked. And we got a great ride all the way to Chicago from Regina. And then we got cold feet and we couldn't figure out where we were. And we took a bus from Chicago to Ann Arbor. And we were just a couple of hicks. And the other guys drove down. So it was a great adventure for us. And it was the best thing that happened to all of us. We all graduated. And we lost one of our 5 last summer. Joe Longhammer was a great guy. Joe Longhammer Chevrolet, you've heard of that. And Joe was very successful and so on. And so were all the other guys. So I'm proud to be one of the survivors so far of the group. And we helped build the Michigan program as we started calling the guys back in Regina. And we'd go back in the summer and tell them how great it was, so on and so forth. So it was the best thing I ever did, was come to school.
What an awesome story. Red Berenson joining us. Of course, he will be playing in the alumni game, Wings and Rangers, a guy that played for both squads, of course. That is April 27th at a Big Boy Arena. We hope to see you out there. Red, what an interesting time to be in Montreal. And I know you were there for a couple of years because, that was and coming on the heels of winning 5 in a row. And then all of a sudden, gasp, they didn't win for 5 years, which I'm sure in Montreal at the time, they were probably saying, what is going on? But you got a chance in 1965 to be a part of a Stanley Cup champion in Montreal. How special was that, especially considering some of the guys, I believe 6 guys in the Hall of Fame in that locker room, some of the biggest names out there, and in Jean Beliveau and Henri Richard. I mean, so many legends. But what was that experience like?
Well, it was a thrill for me, obviously. I mean, just making the NHL after I left Michigan, and I felt so gratified that I'd done it the right way. I finished school, and then Montreal wanted me. Now, all along while I was at Michigan, they called me every year and told me I probably wouldn't make it to the NHL if I stayed in school. And I said, well, I'm going to stay in school, and I'll see what happens. And so every year they told me something. And at one point, well, you'll never make it to the NHL, or you'll never make a living in the NHL, or whatever. But I believed in Al Renfrew, and I liked what we were doing at Michigan. And at that point, there were no college hockey players in the NHL. And there was only one European in the NHL, if you remember. And he was a nondescript player in New York. Ulf Sterner was his name, a Swedish player. But not a big name, but it wasn't common then for Europeans to make it. And there was only one American, Sean, in the NHL in 1962, and that was Tommy Williams. And Tommy Williams was from Minnesota, I believe. So it was, college players were, they were considered not good enough. That was a different path. If you were going to college, you weren't going to be a pro. But then Red Hay, who was a couple of years ahead of me, and he was from Regina as well. He played in Colorado, and he was a good player, and Montreal owned him, but they traded his rights to Chicago. And sure enough, he breaks in the NHL, was Rookie of the Year. And that turned a few heads. And then I was the next one to come up. And they said, well, geez, these college guys, maybe they're not that bad. And then there was Tony Esposito, and there was Keith Magnuson. There was a whole laundry list. And of course, when Ken Dryden came on the scene, there were no doubters after that. And now the NHL, is a third of the NHL rosters are college players. So it's come a long way since then, but we kind of broke a barrier back in the day when we weren't supposed to make it if we went to college.
So cool. Red Berenson, of course, won the cup in 65 with Montreal, moves on to the Rangers, then moves to the Blues. And I think something that probably opened a lot of eyes and people are still talking about to this day. You knew it was coming, Red. November 7th, 1968, 6 goals, 6-goal performance against the Philadelphia Flyers. Only done once since then. Darryl Sittler, other Toronto Maple Leafs. Coach, one of the terms that young people use today is in the zone. I'm guessing you kind of felt in the zone that evening?
Well, I wasn't on a roll. I hadn't scored in a couple of games. It was early in the year, Sean, like it was still in, as you said, November. And I was off to a good start. We played in Detroit a couple of games earlier, and Camille Henry was on our team. Camille was a real sniper. He'd made his reputation in New York with the Rangers, but St. Louis picked him up, and Camille got a hat trick in Detroit. And I remember thinking, geez, that for Camille, like that would be, and I scored a lot of goals in college and junior, but still I hadn't proven myself in the NHL. And geez, wouldn't you know it, 2 nights later, we're in Philadelphia. And when I scored the first goal, I went around their defenseman who used to hack and whack us if we would beat him, we'd get a 2-hander, Ed Van Imp.
Mm-hmm.
And Van Imp, I got around him and I scored on Doug Pavel was the goalie that night. They had Bernie Perrant and Doug Pavel. And Doug was a good goalie and a competitive goalie. But anyway, I scored a goal in the last minute of the first period. So we went ahead 1-0. Scotty Bowman was our coach. And they were matching Doug Pavel and Joe Watson with their top 2 defensemen. And they matched them against our line. And as the game went on, and I got 4 in the second period. And those guys were on the ice. And I liked being a plus player, but I really liked the fact that they were minus. And because we had a real rivalry with Philadelphia, and that was just brewing. This is before Bobby Clark and all the goons showed up in Philadelphia. But we still had a real rivalry with them. And I think St. Louis, being as strong as we were against Philly, that helped build their program. And I know their owner, Ed Snyder, acknowledged that one day. He said, if it weren't for St. Louis, we wouldn't have become the Philadelphia team that we were later on. So it was one of those nights. We were on the road. We didn't like Philly. Puck was going in. If you listen to Dan Kelly's broadcast on the radio, and it's a classic, and you'll hear it, Camille Henry gets over to Edmonton, left to Berenson. And these were all kind of 5-on-5 goals. There were no power play goals, no empty net goals, of course, and we ended up winning 8-0. And Scotty wanted to put me on the ice again for another shift late in the game. And I said, Scotty, I don't think I should go. We've got a shutout, and I don't want to break the shutout. Jock Clown will kill me if we give up a goal, and so on. And so there was that mindset. But it was one of those nights, and I got lucky, and we were probably good at the same time, but it was a team effort. I mean, you can't play the game by yourself. Everybody else played well, and the puck ended up on my stick, and the puck went in. So I never did it again, so it must have been a fluke.
Red Berenson kindly joining us. You could see Red and so many other stars from the Rangers and the Red Wings April 27th at Big Boy Arena, 2:00 in the afternoon. We'd love to see you out there. Red, you came, I guess you could say home, Ann Arbor, Detroit. You came home. Tough time for the Red Wings franchise when you came here, but talk about the opportunity to come back home, I guess, for the first time and play for the Red Wings.
Well, it really was. And, I was playing well with St. Louis. I was the team captain. I was the leading scorer. Things were going well, but our manager, and Scotty was still coaching, but the management, in fact, Scotty had just retired and stepped upstairs to be the general manager, and Al Arbor took over the team. And Al was, a good teammate, friend of mine. And we were doing okay, but the Players Association was getting to be a hot item with the owners, and Al Eagleson was the leader of it, but I was the president. And so they'd asked me to resign from the Players Association. And I told them, look, I told Mr. Solomon, the owner of the Blues, I'm not a union guy. I went to Michigan's business school. I got my MBA. I'm pro-business, but I think we need to revisit the pension and the salaries and so on and so forth. And they understood. They knew that was coming. And I said, I'm more level-headed than maybe the next guy that might end up in this position. So I think if you trust me, that we'll do the right thing for hockey, for the players, and so something the owners can live with. And a month later, I was traded to Detroit. And so it was kind of a trade for the wrong reasons, but they got a great player. They got Gary Younger, who was quite a bit younger than I was, and he was just at the beginning of his career. And he was a bit of a free spirit he wasn't as popular with the Detroit management as he might have been in St. Louis. But anyway, Youngie did well, and I went to Detroit, and it was hard times. And Gordie Howe was in the last couple of years of his NHL career, and I got to play with Gordy. We're both from Saskatchewan, but I never met him before. And I was thrilled to play with the Red Wings, Delvecchio and Bergman and so on. They had just traded for Mickey Redmond, and they got some good players. And then we drafted Marcel Dion. But the Red Wings were still, they were just about, some people called them the dead wings. And they didn't like the manager. The GM at the time became Ned Hartness. He started off to be the coach. But just before I got there, the players all signed a petition against him as a coach. And so they moved him up and brought in Doug Barclay. Remember the old Red Wing defenseman who'd lost an eye in a hockey puck incident. And so Doug was a good coach, but he had a tough time getting our team back to the level that of the 50s when the Red Wings were, really a team to beat. And so we had that over our shoulder. We never made the playoffs in 4 years. I think one year we had 90 points and never made the playoffs. So it was a tough time. And the fans hung in there. And to this day, I meet fans that were, oh, yeah, I remember watching you guys in the Olympia back in the day. And I love to play in the Olympia. We had a great group of guys. I mean, Nick Libet, Mickey Redmond, Marcel Dion, Doug Grant was a 50-goal scorer in Detroit. And, of course, Gary Bergman was an all-star defenseman and so on. We had a good group, but we never put it together. I don't know if we ever had the consistent goalkeeping that you need. And like some of the teams had at the time. But nevertheless, no regrets. We loved living in Detroit. The kids went to school here. It was great. It really hurt me to be traded. Even though I went back to St. Louis as an older player, I still left Detroit. I got traded on New Year's Eve. And the morning of New Year's Eve, Delvecchio had become the GM. And he called me and said, Red, you're going back to St. Louis. Okay. So I said, so you won't have to come to the game tonight. We were always playing at New Year's Eve in Detroit. And so, but I had arranged to have a team party after the game.
Oh.
And so I didn't go to the game, but I got ready for the party. Well, the guy that they traded me for, and I'll try and think of his name here, but he got to Detroit in time to play the game, and he came to the party. And so we kind of traded notes and so on and so forth. And the next morning I headed up to St. Louis. And then we moved back to St. Louis.
As your career was winding down, Red, did you realize you wanted to coach? I think people forget you were a successful coach, won the Adams Trophy, for goodness sake, in St. Louis. But as your career was winding down, was it in the back of your head, hey, this is something I want to do once my playing career ends?
No, it wasn't really. I had come back to school and got my MBA in the summers while right after we won the Stanley Cup. 2 days later, I was in class in Michigan, and nobody knew me from Adam except the one teacher who was a Canadian. And he said, well, aren't you the guy that played for Montreal last week? We won the Stanley Cup. I said, yeah, what are you doing here? I said, I'm preparing for life after hockey. And that was one of my best moments, was when I knew I could look after myself when hockey there was no money in the NHL at that time. I mean, the minimum salary was $7,000. Now it's probably $700,000. But you didn't leave there with a lot of money. And that's why a lot of players had summer jobs, even though they were playing in the NHL.
Red, I want to talk about you moving over to Michigan. You probably could have stuck around in the National Hockey League. As I mentioned, you won an Adams Trophy, let go by St. Louis. You made the decision to come back to Michigan. It wasn't easy early. I remember talking to you. I used to go to all the games when I was a kid, and that was before Yost became what Yost is known for now, in those raucous, great crowds on a Friday and Saturday night. But the decision to come back to Ann Arbor, I'm sure, was an easy one.
Well, it wasn't. And, after I got fired in St. Louis, Scotty called me, and Scotty Bowman, he was the GM and coach in Buffalo. And so, and his assistant coach was Jimmy Roberts. And I'd played with Jimmy in Montreal and St. Louis. And so it was a good fit for me to go to Buffalo. I was there 2 years, and the offer came to go back to Michigan. And by then, I could tell you, I was a little bored with the NHL at that time. I mean, they were slowly expanding. So we were adding 2 teams every couple of years. But I'd been there for, 20 some years. And so, but I always had such a sweet spot and in my memory bank for Michigan and for what it did for me. And so when Don Canham called me and asked me if I was interested, I said, well, I'll come back and talk to you about it. And I asked Scotty what he thought. And Scotty always respected the college hockey programs, and he liked it. And he thought it was he said, you'll love it. You'll do fine there. He didn't know I'd be there for 33 years. Neither did I. So my son Gordy drove over with me from Buffalo. And while I was meeting with Canham and Al Renfrew about the coaching position, my son Gordy got a tour of the school and got an application. And so when we're driving home back to Buffalo, and he said, Dad, I'd really like to go to Michigan if I can get in. I said, what would you think if I came with you? And because he didn't realize that I might be coming to Michigan. And so as it turned out, we both came. So it worked out good. But in the early years, we needed more than a coach. We needed a change in our culture and talent and so on and so forth. So I had all these coaching ideas from Scotty that I thought would fit into Michigan. They didn't fit at all. We didn't have the players or the culture yet to make that work. But we got better, and I think our culture changed, and our players, and our recruiting, and pretty soon Yost was a place to go like it is today. So it's an icon. It's an iconic building. I don't know how long it'll be here. I hope it's here for a long time, but it's been here for over 100 years.
Still one of the best barns and atmospheres you'll find anywhere. I don't care who you root for. It's a special time every time you're in Yost. Coach 2 national champions. I mean, so many incredible teams, breathing life back into Michigan. What's your proudest achievement in your time in Michigan?
Well, I think sticking with the players. You know, we had players, and I'll give you an example. Zach Hyman. Mm-hmm. Zach Hyman was a Canadian Junior Player of the Year in his senior year of high school in Ontario. And he had committed to Princeton. But the coach of Princeton, Guy Godowski, had left after he committed and took the Penn State job to start their program. And so Zach was unsure about whether he wanted to go to Princeton if Guy Godowski wasn't there. And so he put himself up for recruiting. And it came down to us and Boston University, and Zach came to Michigan. And really struggled his first couple of years. And Zach is a hardworking player, like you'll see today as he's playing for Edmonton. But he stuck with, like, you know, a lot of kids today would quit or they'll transfer because they can transfer easily now. And I just told Zach, you stay here and you keep doing what you're doing, and you'll be fine. And he got better and better every year. And he played with Dylan Larkin. Dylan Larkin is a rookie, and Zach was a senior. And I put them together. And it was a home run for both of them. I mean, Zach Hyman ended up being a Hobey Baker finalist, and Dylan Larkin ended up playing his way right into the Red Wing organization after 1 year at Michigan. But nevertheless, look at Zach Hyman now. Who would have thought? And he stuck with it, and he kept working, but he had to learn how to check before he could get the puck and before he could do some of the things he thought he could do with the puck. So it's been really gratifying watching a player like that. Nobody thought be a 50-goal scorer, and he's on his way to scoring 50 now. So that's one story. Those are the things that make you proud.
Well, you're a guy that developed so many players, Coach, and you know, development is so important. I don't think people realize that, but you know, now you see NTDP and taking your time, guys going to NC2A and getting more NHL ready. You are certainly a huge part of that. You know, we could sit and talk to you forever, but people are going to get a chance to watch Red and the Red Wing alumni and Ranger alumni in action April 27th at Big Boy Arena, 2:00 in the afternoon. As Coach said, it's all about raising some money for some important charities. Coach, I can't thank you enough. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You are just a wealth of history and knowledge. Really appreciate you taking the time, and look forward to seeing you again on April 27th.
Well, Sean, it's good to hear your voice and see your face. I hear you a lot more than I see you. And it's great to reminisce a little bit about our hockey history and Michigan and so on and so forth. So thanks for reaching out. I've enjoyed this as much as you have.
Oh, thank you so much. The legendary Red Berenson. Again, come out and see him. Wing alumni, Ranger alumni, April 27th at Big Boy Arena, 2:00 in the afternoon. Thanks for joining us, Red.
Thank you, Sean.
What the Puck, featuring Sean Belegian. Produced by Todd Losey and Blake Matrazak. Executive produced by Sean Belegian and Todd Losey. Theme song and incidental music by Elliot Middleton. Engineering, mixing, and graphic design support provided by the Unsyndicated Podcast team. Don't forget to like and subscribe to What the Puck on all your favorite channels. While you're there, be sure to rate and review the podcast. Got something to say to Sean? Call the Unsyndicated hotline at 248-237-3257.